I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Big news today regarding Oregon's Measure 114. That's the gun control law. It's been paused ever since voters narrowly approved it last year. And in case you missed it, a Harney County judge says it's going to stay on hold. That 114 violates the state constitution. Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum called the ruling wrong and said the state will appeal. We got the 44-page ruling this afternoon and we're still going through it. So you can expect our big story tomorrow to be a deep dive on the judge's opinion. For now, though, we're going to talk about Portland's homeless crisis. We have a lot of sad stories about that, but tonight, fortunately, a victory. An up-close and personal view of one woman's journey from the streets into housing. It's our big story tonight. The path from the streets to shelter is different for everyone. Despite the number of homeless nonprofits and services scattered throughout Portland, it often takes years of work, determination, and even a little bit of luck to get into affordable housing. Earlier this year, our Blair Best met a young homeless woman named Velma Carter. She had spent most of her life on the streets, and in her words, she was lost in the system. But over the course of 9 months, with all kinds of ups and downs, Blair did what she could to offer Velma some hope and a chance at a successful future. And considering the circumstances, Blair got there just in time.
On a January morning in Old Town, it's hard to find anything resembling hope. But if you look closely enough, you'll see it.
My name's Velma Carter.
Velma sits outside the office of Street Roots, a nonprofit newspaper sold by homeless people, like her.
And that's barely enough for gas and food.
She's learned to get by with the basics after growing up homeless and in foster care.
It's been a hell of 26 years. I've been lost in the system.
With no luck finding a full-time job, let alone affordable housing. And it's not for a lack of trying.
I've put in 43 different applications this month to jobs.
Most overnight shelters don't work for Velma, since she doesn't travel alone.
This is Little Ghost. He's 7 months old. He's a Himalayan Siamese. I'm alive still. It feels like there's no way for us to get off the street.
Well, I'm gonna give you my card. Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Can you give me your number?
Of course.
Let's stay in touch. Maybe I can help you.
Thanks.
We met Velma in deep southeast behind a vacant corner store where she hides her RV.
Go ahead and shut the door if you could, or the cats will run out. Not the best, but it's home. I'm the rich homeless, you could say. I'm part of the 1% of homeless that have stuff that ain't in a tent.
An advantage that comes with its own set of challenges.
A broken stove that can't be used, the only broom I own, and what little food I actually have available.
Not to mention a leaky roof, an engine that only runs on occasion.
I stick the key in and it sometimes starts.
And a broken lock, making it easy for unwanted visitors.
And that's honestly a fear of mine, is coming home and having someone in here again. I've had that already once.
It's not just people she fends off, but rodents too.
That's what I have a hatchet for. I've chopped a few of them. If I ever do get the stove up and running or get a stove that works, I know how to make a rat stew.
As the weather turns cold, her days are dictated by the need to find heat.
I wake up about 4 a.m. in the morning because that's usually about the time the generator shuts off.
And every penny she makes goes toward turning it back on.
I want to have a stable house, somewhere that I don't have to pay $20 a day for 15 hours worth of heat.
Later that day, we called a transitional shelter in southeast Portland that we knew had openings. A few weeks later, they agreed to meet Velma.
Oh boy, my hair is atrocious today. I'm just gonna follow you.
Matt Huff is the head of Agape Village.
And I'm gonna go get an application.
It's a low-income housing program run by a local church.
Well, let me just tell you about Agape Village. It's transitional shelter, so it's 12 months. We have a case manager on site that you would work with for housing.
Thank God. I've been trying to get in with a lot of different places lately for that.
And so we'll have you fill out the application. We'll do a background check.
It took weeks for the results, only to find out Velma didn't pass due to an outstanding warrant in Clackamas County on a misdemeanor charge of resisting arrest.
Oh, my Lord, don't get me started on that.
By now, it's late spring. Velma has reached a breaking point.
So because of my open court case right now, nowhere wants to take me.
What does that feel like?
Lost in the system. I can't get off the street. I can't stay on the street. What do? I'm not saying I'm going to, but I see why people turn to drugs.
This day was particularly hard for her.
I still haven't stopped crying.
She had just moved into a friend's new RV in the Northwest industrial area.
It didn't leak, it had heating, it had cooling, it had a working stove.
It burned down 1 month later. We were there the day after the fire as she described what happened and sifted through the debris.
Looking for a fire extinguisher, hoping I can save something, just something of our lives.
Velma and her friends moved back into her old RV and found a new parking spot off MLK. This as talks of stricter homeless policies were heating up inside Portland City Hall. Council passed a daytime ban on camping, RVs included. We made sure Velma knew.
I'm terrified of it. If they're going to be banning that, how soon till they ban RVs?
Yeah, so RVs are included in this ban.
Oh boy.
They're telling us to literally just disappear. There's nowhere to disappear to.
The hunt for where to park was on. They went to Northeast 33rd Drive, a street lined with RVs and a deep-rooted homeless community. Velma didn't stay long before moving back to MLK, adding to the growing camps there and frustrations from neighboring business owners.
We keep the doors locked, you saw, every single day. For years, we've never unlocked the doors. I've called 311 a bunch of times just to have it cleaned up.
It never was cleaned up. Velma stayed there through the summer. When she told us, she had big news.
But yeah, this here is little, if it's a boy, I'm gonna name him Cody with a K. And if it's a girl, Angelica. I'm 3 months pregnant as of the 3rd.
That meant she had 6 more months to try and find housing.
If I cannot get into housing to take care of my kid properly, I'm gonna have to give it up. Well, I've said it once, I'll say it again, the system lost me.
Velma, very nice to meet you.
We brought another outreach worker to Velma, this time from Join, a nonprofit that helps homeless people into housing.
So, what are your goals? What do you want to...
I just want to get into something that I can take care of my kid in.
There's definitely a place inside that is
I'm hoping.
suitable and will be...
I got 6 months to go.
Yeah. Let me just get your phone number.
Of course.
And then I'm going to call you. She's very, very housing ready. Just needs a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance. Yeah, through the process. Navigation.
3 months later, the day she'd been waiting for finally arrived.
Tomorrow I get keys to my new apartment. When I first met you, I was in the mindset, I'm gonna be just another drug addict, always homeless, never able to do anything. I'm gonna have to go into drugs in order to deal with the mental consequences of it. Yeah. And then you showed me that there is a path, there is a light. Sorry about the mess again. It's still move-in time, so I'm waiting on getting a garbage can and things like that. Yeah. There's washer and dryer in unit. Like, look at this. I have done like 15, 20 loads through it already. It is so nice.
And it keeps getting better.
There is a fully fenced-in backyard.
1 year's rent is covered thanks to a family grant.
This one here is going to be the baby's bedroom.
After that, Velma will pay about $400 a month. And while working with Join, she cleared her warrant in court and pled guilty to the resisting arrest charge.
The first time I walked in with the key, I was like, this is actually mine. I can set the rules.
As opposed to life in her RV.
I can't even go in the RV no more. It's the energies, they're different. It's just a dirtier, grungier, harder thing.
What do you feel when you're here?
Alive. Like I can thrive now instead of just survive.
But she's not leaving everything from life on the streets.
The determination to thrive, even in that hardship.
A hardship turned into hope.
It's no longer my home. This is home.
Blair Best, KGW News. All right, so I'm joined now with Velma's outreach worker from Join, Elliot Thompson. And Elliot, something that stood out to me when I first met Velma was her willingness and desire to get off the streets. What was it like when you first met her?
So Velma was one of the first people I ever worked with, and she really taught me how to do my job. She has so much energy, and that helped me realize that there are people who are so motivated and have been working for so long to get off the streets, and all they need sometimes is a catalyst. And so it was just a really wonderful experience to get to know her and her community and how she fit into that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And this isn't the first time we've worked with Join. Last year, Join helped us house a woman named Tara, and that took just a matter of days. Just certain circumstances led to that. But you know, it seems, we've worked with a lot of housing programs, and Join, my experience with them is it's fast, it's right. Sufficient, right. And you guys have access to a lot of housing. So what makes you guys different?
So first off, I have a couple of things. We're low barrier, so whether or not you've been incarcerated, whether or not you've been addicted, you're still deserving of help. And so we work with any population. On top of that, we have housing units that we can use, that we own and operate, which means that we can place people when they're ready. And then the way that we work is about building personal relationships and then working specifically towards giving them autonomy. And so the confluence of those things allows us to move quickly, but also to make it sustainable, because we find what it is they want to do and help them do it.
And speaking of Velma, what's next for her?
So she's due in the next 3 weeks, and so we're making plans to how we're going to get her to the hospital, who's going to pick up the phone, who's going to take her. I'm really lucky she asked if she could call me, and she asked me to be there. And so have her kid, make sure that her home is clean and safe, that we continue to work with her, help her meet her needs, and build towards her future.
I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and we wish the best for Velma.
Yeah, we all do.
Thank you, Blair. How about that? Inspirational story. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about that right now after seeing Blair's story. There are a lot of levels to that journey, from homeless to housing. What stood out to you? You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Now let's take a look at some of your thoughts from our big story last night. That was my one-on-one interview with Nathan Vasquez, the Multnomah County prosecutor who's challenging his boss, District Attorney Mike Schmidt, in next year's election. Vasquez and I covered a lot of ground, and if you missed our segment, you can find it right now on the KGW YouTube channel. There was an interesting theme that we noticed in your comments last night right after the show. Most of the comments were positive about Vasquez. Then the negative started coming in around noon today from folks who said that they're going to vote for DA Mike Schmidt, which is fine. Let's start with the positive comments about the challenger Vasquez. Eric wrote, "Outstanding interview. Thanks for taking the time to ask questions that help show the clear differences between a guy like Nathan, who does the job, and a politician like Mike, who pretends to." And Scott told us, "I liked what I saw, and I decided to make a donation to his campaign. Public safety in our community deserves so much better than DA Mike Schmidt." And an anonymous viewer wrote in, "Nathan Vasquez, you got my vote. It's about time someone started holding people accountable for their actions, no matter how big or little the crime may be. You do the crime, you do the time."
My wife and I just want to say, Pat, this is exactly what we needed. The conversation that you had tonight to make things so very clear. We appreciate very much the very thorough and thoughtful way that interview was done. It was without bias, it was with fact, and it was intelligent, and we appreciate it.
And I appreciate that message. Now, for the emails that support District Attorney Mike Schmidt and not his challenger, there were a number that read like this one from Daisy. "The argument for Vasquez seems to be when things are bad, that's on Mike. When things go well, that's because of me." Diane did not like the blame game. "Vasquez's efforts to blame Mike Schmidt for all society's ills are shameful. We need more integrity in the people running for public office. Voters should be leery of candidates who will say anything to get elected." And we'll end on this one from Elaine. "Nathan wants to take us back in time to the failed approaches that didn't make us safer for decades. The status quo is what has failed us, and Nathan Vasquez is the status quo candidate." All right. Well, keep your feedback coming. Today, we firmed up a date to sit down with the current district attorney, Mike Schmidt, to discuss his work so far and what to expect if he is reelected. You can expect that interview on The Story in mid-January. In the meantime, when we come back, we have a look at another study measuring how well downtown Portland is recovering from the pandemic. There's one group of people the researchers say could spur big-time improvement if they return to downtown. And nope, it's not the office workers. We'll explain when The Story returns. As we head into the holiday season, the city of Portland is hoping you'll spend some of it downtown. Portland's Christmas tree lighting is Friday. It's at Pioneer Courthouse Square, and it usually draws a huge crowd. This is video of last year when people packed into the square for hours, even though it was cold and pouring rain. There are some other events the city's organizing for the holiday season, pop-up shops and festivals, even an ice rink at the west end of the Morrison Bridge. And parking will be free at several downtown parking garages on December weekends. It turns out that focusing on getting people to visit downtown like that may be a really good strategy for Portland city leaders and businesses. A lot of the talk about helping downtown so far is focused on getting workers back to their offices. But a new study shows that visitors and tourists, more than workers, are driving downtown recoveries across the country. This study comes from a group called the Center City District in Philadelphia. They do work to enhance Philadelphia's downtown, but for this study, they looked at data from downtowns in 26 cities across the country. They used data from cell phones to figure out how many people were in an area, where they were coming from, and what they're doing when they get to the downtown. Across the country, they found that visitors were consistently the highest share of people in downtowns. Take a look at these two charts. The one on the left is from 2019, the one on the right 2023. These are averages of all 26 cities now. Both show that around 60% of the people downtown are visitors. Before the pandemic, workers only accounted for 32% of people in downtowns. Now they account for about 27%. The other slice of the pie is residents. You can see that number has grown slightly since the pandemic, especially in Portland, but we'll get to that in a moment. First, let's take a look at the overall foot traffic. This study had similar results to other downtown studies we've looked at. It shows that downtown Portland now has about 70% of the foot traffic it had in 2019. In this study, that puts Portland at third to last in the country for people downtown, with San Francisco and Washington, D.C. keeping us company. The cities with the highest recoveries: Nashville, San Jose, San Diego. They also had the highest numbers of visitors in downtown, both people coming from other areas in that city and also outside the city. Portland, San Francisco, and D.C. are lagging in visitors, only 67% of what Portland saw before the pandemic. The researchers noted that cities that have high number of leisure and hospitality jobs, the ones where you have to show up in person, well, those are the ones where people are coming back to downtown. But places with a lot of tech jobs that can be done from home, like Portland and San Francisco, for example, are not seeing people come back. Portland's downtown has only about half the number of workers it had in 2019. And here's an interesting finding from the study as well. Despite downtown Portland's reputation, despite problems with the homelessness and drug use and perceptions of crime, etc., people do still want to live in downtown Portland, more even than before the pandemic, according to the study. They found that Portland actually had the highest rebound of downtown residents in the country, 134% of 2019's numbers. That's a pattern they're seeing across the country. 25 of the 26 cities they looked at had more residents today than they did in 2019. The researchers conclude that city leaders should really spend their efforts improving the way downtowns look, including improving safety and the perception of safety, and they should also work to diversify the way the land is used for a mixture of offices, hotels, and homes. Coming up next on The Story, when you hear the word contrails, I'm sure there's some big-time conspiracy theories that come to mind for some of you. But now NASA and Boeing are teaming up to study how contrails impact climate change. How do they do it? We'll get a look inside their research labs in the sky when The Story returns. Let's talk about flying and how the world of aviation is inching closer to going green. Boeing and NASA have teamed up to work towards a more sustainable future, doing a lot of research on SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel. And now they're doing some high-altitude experiments focused on contrails. And I know that word has many of you perking up, ready to email or call us with your contrail theories. Don't. But pause for just a moment to check out some research labs in the sky. Kristen Goodwillie from our sister station in Seattle has the story.
This was a massive study, not only because of the data that was being collected, but because of how Boeing and NASA did it. Essentially, these two airplanes were used as flying laboratories, collecting data while in the sky. Boeing's eco demonstrator took the lead.
So the emissions are behind, so this is sampling the clean air that we're traveling through.
Followed by NASA's DC-8 aircraft.
17 different instruments that we use to sample emissions from the lead aircraft.
They tested emissions or contrails with 100% sustainable aviation fuel and then conventional jet fuel.
We're flying through the same air with one fuel, and then we're turning around and coming back with the different fuel, and we see a dramatic difference.
An easy maneuver in theory. NASA has been doing these tests on the ground for more than a decade, but doing it in the sky is another story. It took 3 weeks of testing during 5 to 6 hour flights.
In general, it was really driven by where forecasts would be good for that day for contrail formation, or really, again, those test objectives. But we flew to Montana a lot, sometimes down the coast.
While carbon impacts on aviation and the environment is well studied, there's still a lot we don't know about the impact of contrails.
Having a clear understanding of how they contribute and what we can do to reduce those emissions and reduce those contributions will help to create a greener Earth.
There are good contrails, but this study specifically looks at reducing bad ones.
So by burning sustainable aviation fuel, we could show that the particle emissions are reduced, the ice crystal number in contrails is reduced, and that reduces the climate impact from contrails.
Saying that this research gets them one step closer to fully sustainable planes.
I think it was a great success, really.
According to NASA researchers, it will take months to analyze the data and compile a full report, though the results are promising.
All right, interesting. And I know we said don't send us your contrail emails, but Jerry, we saw yours, so everybody else, bring them on. It's also worth noting that Boeing says it's still testing how sustainable aviation fuel will affect every part of the plane that it touches. So we're still a ways away from planes operating at 100% sustainable fuel. But these results will likely serve as the next step forward. That's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. The good stuff is coming your way next. And be sure to tune in tomorrow to follow up on my Tainted Waters series out of Eastern Oregon. We've got a new story about that. We'll also take a closer look into the judge's ruling that struck down Oregon's Measure 114. We're going to have a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me. That's tomorrow at 6:30.